So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at Mark chapter 5 and verse 41, which is one of the passages in the Greek New Testament where we see words being quoted in Aramaic. And there are two main things that we're going to be doing in this video. First, we're going to be taking a look at the Aramaic words that stand behind the words that are being quoted in this passage. And second, since a lot of the work that I do focuses on classical Syriac, we're going to take a look at how this passage is translated in the Peshitta version of the New Testament, which is the standard translation of the New Testament into Syriac. And the reason why that second part is interesting is because Syriac is a dialect of Aramaic. Now, of course, it isn't the same dialect that Jesus would have spoken, but it's still a dialect of the same language. So it's going to be very interesting to see how a passage that has words in Aramaic is translated into Syriac, which again is another dialect of Aramaic. So let's start off by taking a look at Mark chapter 5, verse 41 in the Greek version of the New Testament. And this is what it says. And taking hold of the hand of the child, he said to her, Talitha cum, which is translated, young girl, I say to you, get up. And so notice that in the Greek version of this passage, there are two words that are quoted in Aramaic using Greek letters, the word talitha and the word cum. And so the first thing we need to take a look at is the actual Aramaic words that stand behind the words that are quoted in this passage. And so the first word that we have in this passage is the word talitha, which is a feminine singular noun in the emphatic or determined state, and it simply means young girl or young woman. Now, the second word that's quoted in this passage is the word cum, which is a pu'al imperative feminine singular verb from the verb cum, and it means get up. Now, for those who might know Aramaic, you'll notice that the word cum has a suffix at the end. Now, in official or imperial Aramaic, that suffix would have been pronounced. And so the entire word would have been pronounced kumi rather than cum. In fact, there are actually a number of manuscripts in Greek, including Codex Alexandrinus, where it is spelled kumi in Greek, with the suffix being pronounced. That being said, we need to keep in mind that in some dialects of Aramaic, the suffix would have been silent. And that's probably the case with the dialect that we're dealing with here. And so when we put these two words together, the Aramaic that stands behind this quotation was probably talitha cum. And so the second thing that we need to take a look at is how this passage was translated in the Peshitta version of the New Testament, which again is the standard translation of the New Testament into Syriac, keeping in mind that Syriac is a dialect of Aramaic. Well, this is what it says in the Peshitta version of this passage. Ve'echad biva datalitha ve'emar la talitha cum, which means, and he took the hand of the young girl and he said to her, young girl, get up. And so there are a couple of things that we need to notice here. And the first thing that we need to notice is that the words young girl, get up in Syriac are basically identical to the words in Aramaic that are quoted in Mark chapter 5 and verse 41. The only difference is that the A sound that you see at the beginning of the word talitha ends up disappearing in the Syriac version of this word. So in Syriac, it's pronounced talitha cum instead of talitha cum. So there's a slight difference in pronunciation, but it means the same thing. The second thing that we need to notice is that the suffix on the word cum in Syriac isn't pronounced. So even though Syriac is a different dialect from the one that's being quoted in this passage, in both cases, the suffix isn't pronounced. And the third thing that we need to notice is that the second part of the passage where it says, which is translated, young girl, I say to you, get up, isn't found in the Peshitta version of this passage. And why is that the case? It's because the words talitha cum already make sense in Syriac, and it doesn't need to be translated. And again, that's because Syriac is a dialect of Aramaic. So that's Mark chapter 5 and verse 41. In our next video, we'll take a look at Mark chapter 7 and verse 34, where we see another word that's being quoted in Aramaic. Now, in that case, it's going to be a little bit more complicated than what we saw in this passage, but it's going to be very interesting to take a look at. Thanks for watching.